NC State basketball certainly had their chances late against UNC. Another opportunity squandered at home, and now we got dirty feet all up in our crib.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? Welcome to this Saturday evening post-game live. As always, it's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This Saturday evening post-game live is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are now here and made better than ever before with FanDuel. New customers can bet just $5 and get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. Head on over to FanDuel.com in order to get started. Saturday evening post-game live. As always, I am Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. NC State basketball falls at the hands of the Dirty Foot Club, 63-61 in the Lenovo Center. The Pack certainly had their chances late, but the cold shooting that we saw over the course of the entire game turned out to be the end result. If you can't shoot well at the rim or literally anywhere else, and you give up, crucial rebound after rebound to Washington, this is the result you get.
It's so disappointing to see what we saw here because we specifically said, hey, you need to be a team that wins the front court battle. We specifically said, your biggest advantage here, because the guard play may be a wash, is that you need to win the front court battle in this game. And honestly and truly, Grayson, without even looking at the stats, do you think that's something NC State accomplished today?
No. I thought Middlebrooks held his own as best he could, but no, not in the end.
And that's what I mean. But when we say front court, it can't just be Middlebrooks. It has to be everybody. It has to be multiple players coming along to make this thing happen. When we're talking about one guy and we're saying, hey, Ben Middlebrooks, you have to be that much of an impact player to where you are single-handedly winning this game for us in terms of our front court guys, it's not enough. It'll never be enough. And even beyond that, even with what Middlebrooks did, you still were outscored and out-rebounded by Jalen Washington virtually. It's not a situation that you want to live with. And again, there's a lot of questions about what's going on with Huntley Hatfield that, we didn't see him today. Was it an injury thing that I'm not knowing about here?
I believe it's a lingering injury from the Notre Dame game the other night. He injured his shoulder and came back in that game, but saw limited minutes. We don't see him at all today, and that placed a lot of the responsibility on Middlebrooks. 5 points. He missed a lot of bunnies at the rim yet again. 14 boards, but as Kenton was saying there, it's just never going to be enough. Yeah,
and again, when you turn Jalen Washington into like Armando Bacot clone, it's never going to be a good time. It's never going to be a good time. And then on top of that, problems that we've talked about all year. We finally get our act together from the free throw line, and then we go, 15, 16% from deep?
Yeah.
It will never be good enough playing that style of basketball. If you're going to be undersized, you're going to give up certain things. You're undersized, and with one of your best bigs injured, you understand, hey, this rebounding battle may not be our best situation. It may not be in our favor. We close the gap there. We finish well in terms of the rebounding situation, and yet and still, we could not throw a rock in the ocean from the beach. That ultimately is what spells out what we get here.
The first 10 minutes of the game was a little bit of a bad omen in that it seemed like only Marcus Hill had any desire to play in this game. He had all 10 points at the 10-minute timeout there. He had to do a little bit of everything. I think he had like 4 or 5 rebounds all by himself as well. The offense today just never got off of the ground. Marcus Hill finished with 20 points. He was 10 of 19, which is insane for Marcus Hill as a stat line. 19 total shots, 0 for 2 from deep. Never actually made it to the foul line, surprisingly enough. And outside of him, and Jaden Taylor had 12 in the second half, there was just no help to be found anywhere. No, it was, seemingly as a repetitive offense of this Keats offense, it's just way too much dribbling. Not enough ball movement, not enough open looks, not enough cutting to the basket. It was too reliant on, either Marcus Hill's going to dribble to the rim and get something, or it doesn't. Or we're going to jack up an ill-advised three. Middlebrooks had a couple of those. Ishmael Diouf had one of those. 3 of 19 from the perimeter. Whether you're playing the Dirty Foot Club or Boston College, Sam Houston State, it doesn't matter. 3 of 19, only putting up 20 points in the first half. It's abysmal. And it just reinforces the same idea that the way this team is structured, you're not good enough to miss bunnies at the rim and expect to come out okay. You're not good enough to get an open look and repeatedly not be able to bury it. This team is not built well enough to have the immense struggles from shooting and get out rebounded. Like Kenta was talking about previous times before, they got to pick a struggle here. You can't be bad at multiple things and, expect to win in any league, let alone the ACC. So this is an extremely disappointing loss. They certainly had their chances late. They even took a very late lead there. Keats calling plays out of a timeout, seemingly never a fun time. It always seems to be a dribble fest, especially in those circumstances as well. Jaden Taylor just trying to put a hole in the floor before giving it up there at the very end. I mean, if you're going to do that, if you're going to draw a play out of the timeout there, it seems like Marcus Hill would be your best option because he's been the only one that can consistently get to the rim all night. So, this is just the result you get. I don't know really what else we expected to happen when you get out rebounded, you can't hit a shot in the first half and for many parts of the second half. So it goes. This is a story as old as literally anything. This is always how it seems to turn out, especially against the Dirty Foot Club. People want to talk about the fouls. I really don't have a problem with the fouls. Both teams had 10 fouls. And in fact, we shot more free throws than they did. So in my mind, that's a wash. I don't like getting into the officiating anyway because it's really never the actual reason you lose a game. NC State lost this game. It wasn't the refs. It wasn't Carolina playing overly well. NC State shot themselves in the foot time after time, and that is the story.
And beyond that, this is resembling that Darian Seabryan offense.
It is.
This is resembling that, hey, we've got to get him the ball, get out the way, maybe get him a screen, and that's all we can do. That's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. We have to have better play calling than that. We have to have better execution than that. I'm going to tell you, I didn't particularly care for any of the screens that were being set in the late game situation. There was one screen in particular, but on the inbound play, Elliot Cadeau literally sees the screen coming and just walks around it on the inbound play. I kid you not. Before the ball is even inbound, we are just starting to get the inbound play going. He sees the screen coming and just like, let me just go ahead and mosey on around this. And is on the other side of it. That is what I mean by there is no creativity whatsoever. Because in a moment like this, every player should have something to where, hey, if your guy cheats it, this is where we're going, and it's going to be wide open. But instead, we're seeing a guy that's undersized and not the fleetest of foot in Elliot Cadeau saying, oh, I think I can get over the top of this, but not even trying very hard. And we had nothing to counter that. We had nothing to come back off that with. All it was at the end was, well, I don't see anything here. I'm going to just go ahead and kick it to this guy, see if he can drive and get some penetration. It's very, again, game on the line. Game on the line. Hey, their leading shot blocker, the only guy who's been a net positive for them on defense in terms of the interior, Jalen Washington's out there. And you don't do anything to get yourself a situation where it's like, hey, you know what? Maybe we go uber small right here. Maybe we go Dontre Styles is our biggest player on the court just so we could get ourselves a situation where he's got to get away from the rim. He's got to respect whoever is out there on the perimeter to shoot. Instead, we get what we get with a lack of creativity, a lack of vision, and overuse of dribbling, and, last play, easy block. That was easy pickings there.
Unfortunately, another stretch of just a comedy of errors when it gets to crunch time. Getting into this game late, and Washington did step up for the Tar Heels in a major way. He did finish with 12 boards. He found a way to make an impact. And that's the kind of thing that we're looking for on the NC State side of things. We're looking for players to rise to the occasion in moments like that one. And not just this game, but over the course of the season, we're just repeatedly not finding answers to that question. We're not finding one guy or two guy or three guys that can step up and take the team on their shoulders in moments like this. I thought Marcus Hill did the absolute best he could, 20-9 for a relatively smaller guy in the court, but he can't do it alone. And that's been the story the entire year. One guy cannot do it alone, and it takes the entire village. The village ain't showing up right now. So this is a very disappointing loss. Coming up next, we're going to get a little bit deeper into the weeds of this game that comes after a quick word from our sponsors. First sponsor of our Saturday evening post-game live is Rocket Money. Has Rocket Money helped you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? It's definitely happened to me, and I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for. Rocket Money makes it easier to track all of these down, and it's like having a personal assistant for all of your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings together everything all in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals that you're looking to set this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved over a total of 500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving each member an average of $740 a year. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. One more time for you, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Middle portion of our Saturday evening post-game live here. Very disappointing loss to Chapel Hill, 63-61 in the Lenovo Center. Already talked a good bit about Marcus Hill. He finished with 20 points, 9 rebounds on 10 of 19 shooting. A staggering thing that jumps off the page for me, Carolina had 17 assists. NC State had only 7. And again, that speaks to one guy essentially having to play hero ball, whether that's by design or just an overall lack of creativity on offense. We don't have the type of roster that one guy can go out and get you a bucket. And that's been a consistent issue of this team. We don't have killers like that. Carolina, inversely, shared the ball to an immense degree, and it found them the open look in the corner. And oddly enough, it was repetitively Ian Jackson. He was 5 of 8 from the perimeter, which is just another issue. For some reason, this team right now, we're struggling with locating their best shooter and getting a guy in that face. It happened against Virginia, happened against Wake Forest, happened against Notre Dame, and it happened again tonight, 4th game in a row, where we cannot locate their shooter and get a man on him in the perimeter. If that does not get cleaned up, you're going to see this issue all season long. It doesn't matter who you're playing in the ACC. There's more than capable shooters that if you can't find a guy to cover them, they're going to bury you. And it happened again today. And I would say Ian Jackson was ultimately the difference in this game. NC State could not locate him, and he made us pay for it.
To me, it's not even about the scouting report, because the scouting report part of this is what you go into the game with, right? Is what you know going into the game. How many damn threes does a guy need to hit before you say, hey, don't help off him? Don't go anywhere. I don't care if we're going to give up a 2. Do not give up the 3 here. Hey, I don't care what happens. Do not. I need you attached to that young man's hip. At what point in time do we need to do that? And I want to talk about something you said in the last stanza there before you said, before we went to break. You said it takes a village and the village ain't come. Did you know that outside of Marcus Hill, or actually I'm going to let you guess, Grayson, what do you think this team's shooting percentage was from the field outside of Marcus Hill? What do you think it was?
We were 36 as a total, probably without Marcus. It might be below like 25.
30% on the nose.
Okay, pretty
30%.
close.
You know where Carolina shot this game? 43. That tells you what you need to know. You talk about making the bunnies, but it's not just about the bunnies. Again, it is a new world. You have to be able to knock down the long ball. It has to be at least something that is a considerable weapon, or else, of course, the floor space is going to be terrible. Of course, guys are going to miss bunnies. You know why guys are missing bunnies? Because there is a ton of congestion in the lane. Nobody is saying, hey, we got to respect their shooters. Who is out there that you have to respect? So if everybody out there has shown themselves to be suspect from deep, what's the answer as a defense? Well, there's only one other thing you can do if you can't shoot from deep. And we're going to go ahead and take that away as well. This is a game that I look at and I say to myself, okay, for all the things that we said you need to get cleaned up, at some point in time, either you're going to knock down those 3-point shots or we're just not going to be anywhere. You and I talked about this last episode in terms of Michael O'Connell and all that he did in the tournament, both ACC and NCAA. He was a weapon from deep. He was consistently a guy. When DJ Horn is getting in the paint and mixing it up, you also have to acknowledge, oh, we can't sag off that MOC kid. We don't have that this year, and it makes it tougher for our guys to get in the lane and make things happen. Shout out to Marcus Hill. He did all that he could. He did everything that he could. It was a Herculean effort on his behalf, but we do not have enough spacing right now.
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfect point because, like, you look at Marcus Hill scoring 10 in the first 10 minutes. Carolina obviously made the adjustments to that, and Hill only scored 10 for the entire rest of the game. And that's because we don't have the shooters to have to keep them honest on the perimeter. If they can just wall up in the interior and essentially take Marcus Hill out of the game, we're entirely too predictable. And, we've been raving about Breon Pass and him needing to be in the ball game for more, due to his 3-point shooting ability. Didn't get much out of Breon in this game. And that's not for lack of trying, but just wasn't really effective. And Carolina could tell. I mean, they took him away on the perimeter, knowing what he's capable of, and we didn't have anybody else to make him pay for it. That is the type of issue that I'm not exactly sure gets solved because the roster, it is what it is. That's not going to change for the entirety of the rest of the season unless you get Mike James back, but I don't think anyone should be holding their breath on that affair. This is what it is. This team's going to continue to struggle until you get more creative on the offensive side, until you're actually able to draw up a consistently, decent play out of a timeout, because I've not been able to see one of recent. It just turns into way too much dribbling. This team is heavily flawed, and I think over the course of the rest of the season, you're going to continue to see that pop up in different forms. So it's frustrating. It's extremely frustrating because you really felt like you had a shot to take this thing home. I mean, again, you had a 1-point lead there with 30 some odd seconds left. You had another look there at the end and you couldn't get a decent look off. I mean, these are the types of games that this team has to find a way to come away with. And we talked about this kind of in the same vein with the Notre Dame game. These home opportunities in an ACC league this year that is extremely up and down. If you're going to play this close, you got to find a way to come out with it, especially when you are at home. And it's, Dirty Foot Club or whoever else, you have got to find a way to get out of the scenario where it's NC State versus NC State. It feels like there's far too many games this year where we're beating ourselves. Some of the games, I mean, they get out of hand early, but not this one. You played so poorly in the first half, and yet you were still just 6 points away. You're in it for the entirety of this game. This is the type of game that we've seen far too many times over the course of the years, and somehow we still cannot find a way to get it done. And that's a very damning mark on this team, this coaching staff, and this program right now. It basically is what it is. It's tough to get on here and talk about it because you turn into a little bit of a broken record here week in and week out. One thing I do want to talk about that I think shone through, though, I was very proud of the fight. This team had several opportunities where they could have mailed it in when Carolina goes up, 7 or 8 points there in the late minutes of the second half. Always found a way to fight and make it close again. And sure, it's a rivalry game, so you expect them to get up for it. But this team, despite everything else, they don't quit. And that is a consistent mark of Keats coach teams. They don't quit. And if that's if that's the only redeeming quality, so be it. But that fight will keep them in games. They have to find a way to close them out, though.
Here's the thing. If Coach Keats were a newer coach, if he were a younger coach, if he did not have time to establish the roster in a way that he liked it, I would agree. I would agree and say, and I don't disagree that it's good that this team show fight. I don't disagree with that. I think that's a very good thing. My only problem is we're too late in the ball game to talk moral victories. Yeah. Same way I feel about Dorian. You're too late in the ball game to talk, well, this is headed in the right direction. Well, this is going in the right direction. At some point in time, we need to see a culmination of the finished product. And don't get me wrong. Everybody can argue, and it'd be a correct argument to say, hey, the culmination was last year and kind of, doing all the things and getting to a Final Four, winning 5 games in 5 days, all that good stuff. But to that, I would say, why can't the product be a consistent winner?
Right.
Why can't the product be a team that consistently shows up, does the right things, does the right way? We are, again, talking about the ACC, where every game virtually has razor-thin margins.
Yeah.
And in a game with razor-thin margins, you would imagine a team not having any three-pointers made outside of 2 players. I believe it was Jaden Taylor and MOC. Not having a single player outside those 2. And by the way, those 2 combined for a whopping 3 triples. You think that that's enough? I don't know what else to say here other than you give up wide open threes to Ian Jackson. You give him uncontested shots. There is more space between Ian Jackson and the closest defender than there is to me and Grayson right now in real world, not how far our screens are apart. And yet and still, we don't get that corrected through one triple knockdown, 2, 3. It gets to the point where you're asking yourself, what are we coaching? What is being taught? What are we doing? Because one player getting it wrong, okay, that's on that one player. He might have just, lost his wits about it. 2 players getting it wrong, those 2 might have just slept through film state. They might not have been paying attention. Every player that is assigned to Ian not saying, hey, I got to go with him, what does that mean?
Yeah, and I think, something that's actually also shocking about this game, and I hate that we always get into these scenarios where it's like, if you would have told me XYZ before the game, I would have thought NC State would win. Far too many chances of those. However, if you would have told me before this game that RJ Davis would finish with 11 points and never shoot a free throw, I'd be like, oh, so State won. State found a way to get it done. Nope. RJ Davis continues to struggle this year. And maybe that makes him a Baycott merchant. I don't know, but his fall off is kind of crazy, and you still couldn't find a way to beat him. You let a freshman, Ian Jackson, run the show 21 points, 5 of 8 from 3. It seems like if it's not one thing, it's something else. And that is like the repetitive story of NC State basketball right now. If it's not one thing, it's something else. So that's where we are right now.
Yeah.
That's where we are right now. Sure, they showed good fight and they were in the game, but at the end of the day, it wasn't enough. And now this is a team that's 9-7. You're 2-3 in conference, and it does not slow down anytime soon. Your margins are virtually at 0 already. And it's kind of shocking how, bad the team was last year at this point of the game, and we were stressing out about making the tournament. This team right now is in worse shape than last year's was. Chew on that for just a second. I mean, it's so entirely frustrating, and you just worry so much about just punting the momentum that you took from winning an ACC championship and going to the Final Four. That's where we're at right now. But coming up next, we're going to round this thing out after a couple more minutes and a second ad read for you. Stick with us. Second sponsor of our Saturday evening post-game live is FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are now here and better than ever with FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need to place live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Head on over to FanDuel.com in order to join today, and you'll get started with that $200 back in bonus bets only on FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, last couple minutes here of our Saturday evening post-game live. NC State basketball loses to Carolina 63-61 in the Lenovo Center. So what's next for this team? And during football season, we always get into our big picture takeaways. There's really not much to take away from this basketball team right now that we haven't already been saying for weeks. This is a team that does not have a leading scorer that can go out and get you a bucket when you need it. I wouldn't even really put Marcus Hill into that category, although he's been the only one that's consistently scoring at a decent clip for us. We have no one on this roster that in winning time, in crunch time, in a moment of need, you know that you can give them the ball and they'll go out and make a play. And when you don't have that on a roster, you're going to see games like this You're going to see games like against Virginia on the road or Wake Forest on the road. We're just stuck in a perpetual circle of mediocrity here, and it absolutely sucks. It absolutely sucks. What else do they really have to take from this game, Kenton, moving forward?
I look at this and I say to myself, it doesn't mean enough to guys right now. It doesn't mean enough to guys. And when I say it doesn't mean enough to guys, I'm starting from the top down. It doesn't mean enough to our head coach to come out with better out-of-bounds plays. It doesn't mean enough to him right now. It doesn't mean enough. It feels like he's gotten fat and happy and high on the hog with the Final Four run last year. That's just me being honest. I need to see more creativity out of this offense. It doesn't mean enough to guys to say, you know what, I need to get up more shots. I need to be consistently, the team needs to be able to consistently rely upon me hitting this shot. I need this team to know, hey, when I am in this spot right here, when you kick it out to me, teams have to respect it. And I'm going to keep shooting until I'm at that point where teams have to respect me. Doesn't mean enough to guys. Doesn't mean enough to guys to say, you know what? I'm going to dominate this matchup in the post. I'm going to dominate a matchup where, as much as, I see some dirty foot clubbers in the chat, and some of them are now chanting J-Wash, but I vividly remember everybody and their mama saying that guy stunk and that they need to go get better bigs. It doesn't mean enough to guys to say, hey, that guy, I'm not letting him beat me. Oh, absolutely not. It doesn't mean enough to guys to say, I hate the Dirty Foot Club with everything in my heart and soul. Everything that's in me. When it's time for them, you will get the best version of me that you've ever gotten. It doesn't mean enough to guys. It just doesn't. And that's what you get. And that's what gets you what you see when you get a bunch of, kind of uncoordinated dribble handoffs in the game. Kind of, let's see what we can get done. And it's what gets you the lack of detail that has, for whatever reason, when MOC and Ben Middlebrooks are switching at the end there on Cadeau before he drops it off to Washington in the post. When he picks up the ball and is pivoting, why are you not immediately switching back? Why are you not immediately saying, he's right behind me? I got to, it's that type of lack of detail. And again, you're already undersized. You know that you're down BHA, so you don't have a second guy in the paint that can match that size. And it doesn't mean enough to right away get to where I got to get to.
It's interesting you brought that up because I want to say it was either after the Wake Forest loss or maybe it was before or after the Notre Dame game. Keith kind of questioned the effort level, like indirectly in some of the comments. And I think what you saw today, it proves exactly right. The effort level, not just in this game, but across the board, it's just not there right now. And I remember, I think there was a couple post-game comments after the Notre Dame win that, the guys had decided at halftime, we can't go out like this. We can't keep struggling like this because we feel like we have enough to get the job done. But the effort and the intensity and the execution is just consistently not there. And so that right there, that is how I know this team to be. Like that to me is their identity. This team can't finish a game. They can't be consistent seemingly anywhere, not from the perimeter, not at the foul line, not on defense at times, although I thought the defense today was relatively okay. But you gave up too many boards offensively, or you gave up too many offensive boards, and it led to your downfall. You gave up too many wide open looks today to Ian Jackson, and it led to your downfall. You missed too many wide open looks from three today from people not named Jaden Taylor, and it led to your downfall. There's so many things that this team is doing that leads to, how do I rephrase that? This team can't find a way to close a game. In fact, they're seemingly running into ways to lose a game rather than to win them. And I think I said that more than once the other night, but it still rings true here today on Saturday. So extremely disappointing loss to UNC, 63-61 in the Lenovo Center. NC State up next will play Virginia Tech. I believe that's on Wednesday. Again, another game. Every single game from here on out is an absolute must win. Your margins are below zero. In fact, you don't have any room. There's no wiggle room. There's no more games that you can't afford to not win. Every single game has to be a must win. And that's a tough spot to be in here as you're not even in mid-January yet. But it is what it is. Disappointing loss. They'll pick up the pieces and move forward. Thank you all so much for joining us here post-game Saturday evening. Be sure to hit that like button, drop your comments in the comment box, mash that subscribe button if you have not already. We'll catch you all on Monday for more football recruiting news that broke recently after our last episode. We'll cover that Monday. And until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.